The coolest thing that we have done with Pendo is we have seen 2.5 times more accounts reach our first time active use metric when engaging with our guides, also known as the Pendo guides. How do we do it? We leverage data to determine who has not reached our first active use, and then we determine what configure items still need to be done to get them to active use, and then put a personalized guide out, having them complete those configuration items to get them to active use. It's been really exciting. We love Pendo.
Hi there, and thank you so much for popping into this webinar. I'm very excited to share what we put together and hope that you find a lot of value in it. Today we're going to share 3 product management lessons from online learning best practices. And my name is Katie Babley. I'm a learning technology analyst here at BenchPrep. I'm a twin. She looks nothing like me. I'm from Frisco, Texas, currently live in Chicago, and yes, the winters are very cold. And then lastly, I'm a huge learning science nerd. I'm not a psychometrician by any means, but I am passionate about what truly engages learners and what methodologies help us transfer knowledge the most effectively. So that's a little bit about me. So now to jump over and talk about BenchPrep. So we were founded in 2009, so recently celebrated our 10-year anniversary. We're headquartered at Chicago, as I mentioned, albeit we're all remote right now. And then most recently, we were awarded as finalists in the 2020 Cody Awards, as well as a 2020 Hot Vendor by Aragon Research, both awards of which we are very proud of. And then last but not least, as this is something we're also super proud of, is more than 6 million learners have used BenchPrep's white label platform to attain academic and professional success. So with that, I mentioned BenchPrep's white labeled platform, academic and professional success. What exactly does BenchPrep do? Well, we can explain that first by sharing our logo slide. And many people see this and say, the logo slide, of course, you're going to show who you work with. And we don't do this to say, hey, look at all of our great partners and who we've been able to enable, but we also like to show this to show the variety of partners that we partner with. So at BenchPrep, we actually provide a white labeled configurable platform that will enable each of these partners to deliver various types of programs that range from continuing education to product training and certification to MCAT exam prep. So they provide really the product vision. Hey, we have this course, we have this continued education program, we need to drive revenue in X way. And we say, all right, here's our platform, here's our tools, and we marry that with our professional services, and we help them deliver their products that they then deliver to end users. So that's a little bit about BenchPrep. Again, we are an e-learning platform or a digital learning platform, and these are a few of our partners. And today, I believe that there's a lot of alignment between us and what you all do, even though our roles are very different, and that our mission is to elevate everyone's potential. We believe that everyone is a learner, and we believe that almost every company is a learning organization. So you all as an audience for product managers, when I say learner today or course today or learning experience today, I'll use that interchangeably with user because your users are learners of your product. And when I say course or learning program, what I mean is your product experience. So we'll talk about the things that we typically share with our partners and potential partners to say, hey, here are 3 pillars to drive success with your learning programs. And we're going to apply those same 3 pillars to likely your learning onboarding programs is a good way to apply them. So everyone is a learner. Your learners are your users. So why does a session matter? How do we know to trust you, Katie? Well, some of the stuff may not be specifically relevant to your organization, but I'd encourage you to take what we share and see where you can apply it, see where you can think differently. We have spent thousands of hours researching and developing learning programs with our partners. we know what learning modes work in a digital context, and we truly believe that this 3-pillar framework will help you evaluate your onboarding programs. And then lastly, we are a SaaS platform as well. So we're not only trying to think through how to engage learners, but the thing that makes us different is we're not just putting content online. We're not saying, hey, here's your content, learner, come tell us when you're done. We're trying to put scalable learning online. So user journeys and user experience is super important to us. All right, so I've mentioned a couple times we're going to talk about 3 different pillars to help explain these 3 different things you can apply to your onboarding programs. And we'll go ahead and get started with the first one, which is the learner experience. So for you all, again, the user experience with your onboarding program. That's what we'll think through here. There are 3 different things within each pillar. 1, is it easily accessible for pillar 1? 2, is it a one-size-fits-one option? And then 3, is it actionable and insightful? Those are 3 things that we believe our partners or you all as product managers can apply to your onboarding programs to make it a good learning experience. So with that, I always like to come up with or think about, if I'm explaining why something's important or how to apply something, what's a common thing that everyone is familiar with that we can use to illustrate the example. And Netflix is one that I think really illustrates these 3 different takeaways for the learner experience. And we'll talk about why. So the first one was accessible. Is it available on any device, anywhere, anytime? With Netflix, you can pull it up on your phone, you can pull it up on your tablet, you can pull it up on your TV and your other TV if you've got 2 TVs in your house. This is key for software learning too. I mean, you can't ship a manual with every software update. In addition to whether or not it's available on every device, it also should sync. So for example, if I'm using a knowledge base, I can see what I've accessed before or in the past. How many of you all are thinking, this is just one example, if I think about a tool like OneNote, OneNote or a Google Docs is a way to keep notes. And as an example, if I had used just a notebook and we were told, hey, we're going to test out this whole work from home thing for 3 days, and then we never came back and still haven't gone back, and my notebook was at the office, I wouldn't have those very important notes. But because I use something that is accessible anywhere, anytime, on any device, I haven't lost my ability to obtain those notes. Same thing with your onboarding. Can it meet learners where they are and stay with them no matter what? Oh, went back. We're going to go forward. So again, think about your knowledge base. Is your learner experience effective and consistent? Can you open it on the web, on the mobile, test less popular browsers and see if it's working? The second aspect of the first pillar, which is learner experience, is a one-size-fits-one option. So Netflix, I can watch The Crown when my husband can have his own profile and watch race cars speed around the track for his Formula One show. Everybody has their own persona journey within Netflix. And the same thing should apply to your onboarding programs. This is persona-based programming, and you're going to think about this both by a user's role and creating learning tracks also for power users versus users that might be a little bit, less technologically advanced. The ways that we do it is learning paths. So we provide learners paths through content. We use adaptive learning. So we say, hey, what's your skill level before we get started? So that we can give you, Joe, with 1 year of experience, a specific path through content based on your weaknesses. And then we can give you, Sam, who has 10 years of experience, a different path. And then lastly, it will help you scale your knowledge sharing. So as an example related to Pendo, when you think of Pendo Adopt, this is an application of persona journeys to help you achieve this. All right, so consider your user's role. That's the one-size-fits-one option. It's not a one-size-fits-all option. Is this a super user? Are they a salesperson versus an operations person? What is their role and how can I tailor their onboarding to them to make it a better experience? And then the last part of pillar 1 for learner experience is, can it be actionable and insightful? So going back to Netflix, when you log in, I can see continue watching, Katie, or what's up next, or suggested for you based on what you've learned. How can you use, say, progress markers? Those are key to a user experience pattern for onboarding flows. Pendo uses recommended checklists that show you how far you've completed an onboarding module? How can you just create some type of actionable insights to say, here's what you've done, here's what you can do next? For us, this comes in the form of learner progress, goal setting. We also have a strengths and weaknesses dashboard, which says, hey, Katie, based on your progress so far, your strengths are this, you're doing great here. Your weaknesses are this. Maybe an action for me is to focus on my weaknesses. For you all, it could be, hey, Katie, you've completed X, Y, and Z, and you do that every day. You do this probably once a month, and then you have not even ever touched this tool. That could be my knowledge gap. So thinking through ways to apply actionable insights to your specific programs. All right, so that leads us to pillar 2 out of 3, which is learner engagement. So we just talked about how to create a good learner or user experience with onboarding. Now let's talk about how to keep them engaged. There are 3 things that we'll share here. 1 is contextual encouragement, 2, building learner confidence or user confidence, and then 3, creating a community. So the question is, are you encouraging your users to log back in? What's happening in terms of engagement as they progress through the product? Are you calling things out to them? The example we'll use here, very similar to what we did with Netflix, is Duolingo. Now, just going to engage the audience. Raise your hand if any of you all have ever used Duolingo or are familiar with it. I'm raising my hand. Awesome. Great. Awesome. I like to just try to engage people. So Duolingo, what they do is if I haven't logged in, they're going to send me a crying owl, which looks very sweet, and say, Katie, we haven't seen you in a while. Why don't you get logged in? That's going to remind me, oh yeah, I made that goal for myself. I haven't done it. So that's a great example of using contextual communication, in this case, outside of learning. So it's really small what I'm doing. It's 5 minutes. Hey, jump in, just do this really quickly, but it's also re-engaging me. When we think about how we think about through this at BenchPrep, there's actually a case study from one of our partners that we want to share. So ProLiteracy is one of the largest adult literacy nonprofit organizations in the nation. And their mission is to help adults gain reading, writing, computer, English, and English skills that they need to be successful. So that's their overall mission. And they were part of a study that looked at, okay, for this adult literacy course that's several weeks long, if we send personalized text reminders to the learners, will we see an increase in attendance? And the answer was yes. So here are some examples of what some of those texts look like. So, hey Joe, class practice and hard work will help you improve. We're all excited to have you back in class on Monday next week. I know for me, I'm very forgetful. I have a terrible memory. So if I don't have reminders and calendars set, I'm not going to go. This is going to help increase that engagement, increase the likelihood that Joe is going to make it to class. And what they saw was after 8 weeks, the weekly encouragement increased attendance by 25%, and that continued for 15 more weeks till the end of that class. So in thinking through where can I apply this within my product, well, are you reminding learners to log in if they haven't logged in? Do you have learners that have never activated their password as part of their onboarding, and can you send them that reminder? Also, Pendo adopts an example of this. How can you create in-context learning from Pendo? So what we just talked about with ProLiteracy is outside of context or outside of product reminders, but this is within context reminders. So how can you apply that to your user onboarding? All right. The second aspect of pillar 2 is confidence is key. So I'm going to do another raise your hand. So raise your hand if you've ever wanted to learn something and gave up because it was too hard. For me, it's piano. The same thing should be applied, or that same thought should be at least considered with your user onboarding. So for Duolingo, the way they apply this is they first do things that say like, materials. That's going to be an easier thing. We'll start you there. As you progress and improve your skills, we're then going to introduce more difficult things. So it's considering user confidence so that you don't just completely have drop-off rates. The same thing should go for your tools. Can you introduce a very easy onboarding program to help build that learner's confidence up, build the basic skills, and then introduce something that might be a little bit more difficult? And how can you apply that? We do the same thing here at BenchPrep, but in terms of, we do that with adaptive plans in terms of, hey, let's do it based on your strengths and weaknesses. But we also track confidence. So when a learner reviews a lesson or answers a question, they can pause and self-reflect. Did I understand that? Or did I not? I'm going to rate high, medium, or low confidence. And what that does for the learner is it not only says, okay, at the end of the day, I can go back and see what did I not understand. I marked low confidence and I can review that. But for you all as product managers, or maybe their manager, they can say, oh, Jesse marked a low confidence on this. How many other people did that? Okay, 70% of our users marked a low confidence on this specific part of our product. And this could be surveying users on their perception of feature usability, or how do you rate your ability to use this feature. It's definitely going to be harder to unpack, but there are ways to apply or think through user confidence and track that and think about how does that play into your onboarding program. In terms of metrics, we've actually seen providing learners the opportunity to self-assess increases engagement. So when learners do rate their confidence, they're likely going to, so the 75th percentile of confidence level users answered 36 more questions. If you look at the bottom stat, the top 10% of confidence level users answered nearly 5 times the questions. And when we look at waterfall metrics, we also know that when you answer more questions or you complete more activities in a course, the outcomes are going to follow. So for you all, if you can look to say, hey, here are the outcomes we want to provide and where does confidence tie into that, that could be a really cool user story, and it will actually tie into pillar number 3 once we get there. But before we get there, we'll talk about the last aspect of pillar 2, which is make it social. So create community through social learning, and Duolingo does this as well. We have a discussion tool here at BenchPrep. Learners can ask an expert if they have a question on something. They can discuss specific topics. They can create and share community flashcards. But creating a community, especially during these days, helps learners or users. It reminds them that they're a part of something. If you're doing something in isolation, you're much likely to be less engaged than if you're doing it or that your peers are doing it. So an example here is, building community through Slack. Many of you here are part of the Pandemonium Slack. It's part of building a user's community. So how can you apply this within your onboarding programs? Do you have some type of discussion forum or general discussion panel that users can be a part of? Or let's say you're implementing an enterprise customer. Can you help them or encourage them to, as part of their onboarding, create a specific Slack channel for their Salesforce questions or their Slack questions, whatever tool they are implementing? Can you create some type of community to help users enable each other? One, that's going to reduce the support you have to provide, but it's also going to increase that engagement. All right, so now we're at pillar 3. And pillar 3 is likely my favorite pillar as part of an onboarding program, as part of a learning program, because that's where you really get to see and draw directly towards the impact. So here we say measure learning effectiveness, but what we're going to talk about is measuring your onboarding program effectiveness. So you, 1, start with why. 2, identify learner behaviors or user behaviors. And then 3, gather that data and analyze it. So those are the 3 aspects to apply to enable you to measure your onboarding program effectiveness. So to start with the why. So 1, this is, something that I like to live by, or, when you're hiring people, I like to ask them, what's your why? I like to understand that about people, but it's just as important with projects or new initiatives. So when you're developing your onboarding program, I believe it's also important to say, why are we doing this? What are we trying to solve? And how would we measure success? So set up your work with a strong team-wide understanding of the core business objectives. This is critical to onboarding program success. You need to have a why. So how do I do this? Well, when you're designing your onboarding, when you're doing so, be deliberate in measuring, what does a better onboarding program look like? How would we measure that success? Are we solving for churn? Are we increasing usage frequency? Are we reducing one-on-one trading sessions? What is your why, so that no matter what you're doing, you can always connect it towards that? And then at the end of the day, you're not doing something as a great job, we did it, we checked that box, but you're likely going to make improvements, and it's likely going to evolve over time. And you want to be sure that you have the data and you're measuring against the why to make those decisions. So come up with the why. The second one is identify those learner behaviors. So we talked about the why, but the behaviors are important in order to start tracking certain things. In order to track them, we also suggest categorizing them. The way we suggest from a learning program perspective to do it at first is just to create 2 buckets. It's as simple as that. One is in-learning behavior, and we'll get to the second one in a second, but first we'll talk about in-learning behavior. So this could be in-product behavior. So these are actions that take place for us when a learner is actively learning. For you all, again, in-product behavior, this is where Pendo can be a source of that data. So us, it's, I'm taking a course, I'm answering questions. For you, it could be, I am clicking on this tool, I am running these reports, I am using this feature. What are those in-app or in-product user behaviors that you want to track? And then, of course, we put those into broader categories. Ones that we use are utilization. So how much does a learner use the course or use the product? Performance, how are they doing? Are they able to get to an end product, or are they giving up? Satisfaction, how happy are they with their overall experience? And then retention, are they logging back in? Are they coming back for more? It's just as important for us managing learners and trying to engage learners as it should be for you all as product owners. So the first one is in learning behavior. The second one is, you got it, out of learning behavior. For you all, it's out of product behavior. So what behaviors outside of the product should you be tracking in order to eventually measure the impact to the why? So this could be related to your CRM, your help desk, the number of support tickets you see. These are going to be external data sources. For us, we put them into categories such as support interactions, product or program purchasing, other company interactions, which could be marketing campaigns. Likely those are very transferable to how you would track the out of program behavior. So 2 buckets: in-program behavior, out-of-program behavior. The out-of-program behavior is likely going to be a little bit more complicated, and we'll talk about that in a second. But what's important here is to make sure that everything that you're gathering, whether it's in-program or out-of-program, in-product, out-of-product, in-course, out-of-course, whatever you want to say, is tied to your why. Is this a metric that is a leading metric or a leaning metric to the why? Like I said, out of behavior is a little bit more complicated, so we also want to be sure that we address a couple things here. It's likely going to be stored in disparate locations, so being sure to address that at the very beginning of implementing this is important. You don't want to be scrambling at the end and saying, oh, I wish we could compare this with this to see this, and then not be able to get that information in time. So this could, again, be in your CRM, it could be in your HR portal, wherever this is, your BI tool. Be sure to identify where that is. And then lastly, because you are going to be doing those comparisons, be sure to be upfront with what that unique identifier is, and that there's something that you can track across those different systems. You're going to thank yourself later by thinking about this at the very beginning of your onboarding program. So we've talked about, okay, we want to figure out what business problem we're trying to solve. Then we're going to figure out what user behaviors are we tracking, both inside the product and then outside of the product, and where do those, where are those groups? We also want to make sure we know where those systems are. We communicate with those teams that we need this data, how do we get this data, and that there is a unique identifier. And then from there, we get the data. So this is the best part. We get the data and we analyze it. So this is that third part of pillar 3 for measuring that effectiveness. And we'll go to the next slide. So the 2 steps we outlined for this, the why and the 2 buckets, were done to make sure that where we go to analyze, it's pretty easy. It's exciting almost. It's like you're uncovering stories with the data. And as you work, also think about the 40-70 rule. So this was coined by former Secretary of State Colin Powell, but this rule suggests that decisions should be made with 40 to 70% of the necessary information, which makes me, as someone who is somewhat of a perfectionist, a little scared. And I know that our strategy team here at Bench Prep says, cool it, Katie, you're fine. This is the rule. This is what we should be doing. And why? Well, because if you have any less than 40% of that data, you're likely acting on instinct rather than information. And then if you have any more than 70% of that data, you're likely acting too late. So the opportunity may have already passed for you to make a certain data-driven decision. So recognize that in your own world, the time to begin sharing ideas may come earlier than you feel comfortable with, and that is okay. Being vulnerable is okay. So what we always like to say is, don't fall victim to the paralysis by analysis. Well, I think this, but I'm not super certain. So a good analysis uses data to arrive at an answer, and a great analysis helps make decisions. And there are a couple things here. So again, we just mentioned, you may not have all of the data you think you need, but really you do. You actually need 40 to 70% of that data to start making those decisions. And uncertainty is the enemy of confidence. Audiences crave certainty. So when you're presenting your findings to whoever that might be, the executive team, the steering committee, they're going to want to hear your confidence. So be confident in the data that you found, even if you feel like it's incomplete. If it tells a story, follow that story. As long as you document that story, you can look back later and you can augment. We're all making hypotheses, we're testing them, and we're using data to do so. And then bonus, and this is probably one of my favorite parts about analyzing these, is creating visual stories. So using data to draw correlations, to draw patterns. Think of a chart that helps effectively visualize the shortened insight to action statement. And be really, be serious, or I guess have intent about thinking about charts that are going to compel action and help make it very clear that there's a decision to make. And then frame up a follow-on analysis that, if conducted, would help further motivate that action. And then I mentioned this earlier, but we're making hypotheses based on, and then we're testing it, we're seeing that data, and then we're going to continue to do that again and again. So document that. Document what works and what doesn't, so that you can revisit that. And you're almost building a library of, hey, here's our user onboarding program, here's what worked, and we looked at that data, so we made this change, and then we saw negative results, so we reverted back and we tried something different. But as long as you're gathering data and you're using that data to inform your decisions, and then you're tracking that, you're going to be building a good program for scale. So these are some takeaways, and these are actually the exact takeaways that we share with our learning program partners. So one, determine how you're going to measure program success. That's going to be your why. Hey, here's our why. We're going to try to drive more revenue, or we're going to try to drive more users. So that's the metric we're going to use for success. Then create a hypothesis and outline what you would need to measure it. So we think that if we do this, we are going to see this impact on our why. So to track that, we need to track X, Y, and Z. And here is our out of app or out of product metrics, and here's our end product metrics. Next, we're going to establish a process and tools for gathering those data. So remember unique identifiers and understanding that there are likely other groups that might need to be involved with helping you get that data. And then say, all right, we're going to build this program and let that run its course, and we're going to evaluate at X cadence. And then lastly, understand how you're going to share that data. Put it into compelling stories, put it into graphs, create something that shows that there's a clear action that can be taken, and be confident about that. All right, so I have talked quite a lot today. It's always weird when you can't see others interacting with you and you can't respond to questions, but I really hope that you all enjoyed hearing 3 different takeaways, or 3 different pillars that we help learning program designers, directors of learning apply to their products, and you can take those away and apply them to your onboarding programs. So with that, what can you do right now to go see if your onboarding program, is up to snuff or has these 3 pillars? Well, there are 5 main questions that you can ask. So 1, is it available on any device? Is it accessible? That was part of pillar 1. Can I configure it for a variety of products? Can I personalize the learning experience for each professional? That's the one size fits one. Am I engaging my learners each step of the way? Meaning, am I keeping them engaged? Am I using contextual reminders? Am I using in-context reminders? Hey, check this out, using Pendo Adopt. Secondly, am I building their confidence? Am I starting small and then building up things as they go? And then the last one here for 5 is, am I getting the data I need to optimize my programs? So again, it's not just a one and done thing. It's going to be something that you're going to continually say, okay, how are we doing? Are we driving towards the why like we want to? And if not, what decisions can we confidently make based on the stories we've told with our data to make those changes? So those are just 5 key questions to ask. There was a lot talked about today. I hope that you all found it valuable. Again, my name is Katie Babbely. I'm a learning technology analyst here at BenchPrep. And at BenchPrep, we just enable partners to drive their learning programs and provide the solutions that their learners need. But if you do have any questions about what we do here at BenchPrep or some of the things that we talked about today, feel free to reach out. And then other than that, I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Thank you.